I'm forging ahead. You know, I was making an example last night in the old mutual thing. I said one thing I learned from the golfers, which is a good thing. The golfers said you must keep your eyes on the ball, your head down, and follow through. So I'm still keeping my eyes on the ball even today. I continue to follow through. So we went on the 19th, a huge fight in cabinet. By the way, I placed the budget on the 4th of February and said, here's the budget. And this budget, there are items which are not going to be funded, including education and health, and that is 112 billion rand over the MTF. And it's unworkable. And I say in that committee, I've looked at the various taxes. I've eliminated company tax. I've eliminated personal income tax. I don't run models. I look at practicalities. That's why they would fight with me. Because I asked myself that all the mining companies, they can't take their stuff to port. They are not profitable. As we speak, I was met with the Chrome guys. They're closing furnaces. If you are saying I must tax those people, I'm actually adding loss of jobs. Personal income tax is quite an interesting one. 60 million people are working, 7 million people are paying tax. Of that 7 million, 490,000, according to the commission. 490,000 pay 47% of the income tax. What does that mean? So I took this decision. I said in cabinet, I'm going to increase VAT. Only 2 cabinet ministers took me serious and took me to task. One leaked it to the Sunday Times. So when I came back, they were all shocked because I did warn them. We debated. We had to face the risks that are going table or we postpone. We chose the latter. We have tabled now a revised budget. And that revised budget, mind you, in the original budget on the 19th, I was giving you, from an income tax perspective, tax relief. In the one I presented yesterday, unfortunately, no tax relief. Reduced substantial the VAT, but my eyes on the ball. I still want to fund education, fund health, fund the defense force, and make sure we've got enough. Correctional service can't even pay the existing employees. So my eyes on the ball is that the funding side of things still remains the same. We might have tweaked around with the revenue side, but the funding side still remains the same. So I'll hear people, I don't know how we are going to structure it. People are going to ask me questions. Thank you very much.
Good. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Minister, for being here. And and he was just looking at his watch. Congratulations on your budget. I think under the circumstances, it's a good budget, and unfortunately, the aspects of the budget which are going to hopefully bring us economic growth are unfortunately not going to be focused on much this time round, because we're also fixated on the taxation side of things. So that's a pity, and I just do want to say to the audience that there is an upside to the budget, and that is the emphasis on infrastructure spending and the reforms that Treasury is making. So well done on that. Thank you for your remarks. I think they really helped sort out actually my first few questions on why you raised taxes and why you chose VAT. It's not a popular choice. And from here you're going to the ANC caucus to continue the fight. Tell me about the contestation in your own party. How difficult has it been, and how difficult do you think it will continue to be?
It's going to be difficult because political parties develop manifestos. They develop manifestos. When they develop those manifestos, people tend to stick to the manifesto irrespective of the changing circumstances. For instance, one of the ANC manifestos says we should reduce the cost of living and therefore not only increasing VAT but reducing the current VAT rate. So those will say, in fact, what I've done runs against the manifesto. So it's some of those challenges one is going to be facing.
Right.
The same part with the DA. The DA says we campaign against increasing taxes.
Exactly. One thing I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that Minister Godongwana has got political courage. I've seldom seen a finance minister who's as willing to be unpopular as you are. But
it comes with age.
Yes, I think it does help that you're not actually, you realize that you're not going to go on forever. And
I'm not running to be elected
in president.
2027.
Exactly. Right, it does help. But, I mean, do we not have a problem with the ANC in that they keep on adding items to the expenditure? They love to spend, and they've been able to do so with very little accountability for a long time. No one has stopped them and said, stop, we can't do the spending. Don't you just have a party that just loves to spend?
Look, I don't know of any political party that does not want to spend, particularly closer to an election. Particularly closer to an election. Do you know the story when people were saying, Ronald Reagan said, read my lips, I'm not going to increase taxes. And when you go to Dubai, increase taxes. So when it comes to an election, it's a challenge which political parties across the board would like to be popular and do things, and in the process have a serious impact on the budget processes. And ANC is no exception. I think we also have got that ambition.
Right. You were a champion of the GNU. You worked behind the scenes to get us a good government of national unity to make alliances with the right partners. But now you've been working with the DA for however long, nearly close to a year now, and they've just rejected the budget. Tell us about that.
Let me just say, rejecting budget on its own is not a problem. Rejecting the budget on its own is not a problem. What is a problem is how they have gone about doing it. Let me say, first and foremost, they've compromised Treasury by saying, this is an ANC budget. An independent institution such as Treasury, you make it an ANC channel. That's the first point they've done, is to compromise the Treasury Department. The second thing they've done is, having done that, is to politicize it to the extent of campaigning where we are in the GNU. The third thing they have done, at GNU, we go into once you're a cabinet member, you go into the cabinet as a minister of state than a delegate of a party. When you go into cabinet, you are a minister of state and you are not a representative of a party. What they've done, which is bad for the GNU, is to constitute themselves as an opposition inside the GNU and as representative of a party than ministers of the state. That is breaches all the protocols of a cabinet. So if they came out, even as individuals, and say, no, this Minister of Finance is a crazy guy, and leave. Because once you bring the ANC now is trying to defend itself, and we're not going to get a DA budget. So as Treasurer and myself, Minister of Finance, and the team, we get caught between these contesting political parties instead of saying it's a crazy budget. Because even the ANC people were opposed to it. And why do you make it an ANC in a project? Then you are bringing the ANC into the fray and we become sandwiched. You know?
Right. How do we solve this? Can we solve it? How do we solve it? It's uncharted territory. We've never been down this road before. How do we solve this problem?
Here's the difficulty. Here's the difficulty. The DA is said when I met them, because, by the way, I met the DA on the 7th.
That's right, yes. 7th of February.
7th of February, even before I could meet the ANC, I was supposed to meet the ANC on the 10th, they cancelled the meeting. As you know, I met them on the 17th. So, here's the problem. The DA says, we understand what you're talking about. Our problem, we've suffered a number of losses in this ANC. Is the BELA, is the NHI, is the Expropriation Act. In order for us to regain some of the losses, we're going to fight battles with the budget. And as a result, some of these issues like Expropriation Act and other things are part of the issues they are putting on the table for the budget, which are beyond the Treasury officials to look at. In other words, it's difficult for the Treasury officials to debate an Expropriation Act if they want to accommodate political parties in what they say.
So in other words, we have a political problem and not a budget problem.
Precisely.
Yeah. So I think then it's up to the political parties to solve this problem.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I hope
If they can, I don't know.
if they can, yes. We hope they can. for
Because
all of
what
us.
is happening now, they are getting more and more polarized.
That's right. That's right. No politician likes to lose an argument either, right?
No, I mean, you want to lose a rational argument.
Yeah.
You want to lose a rational argument, but if you are dealing with an argument, for instance, I'm not losing an argument if people bring an Expropriation Act to me.
Yeah.
But if somebody argues that this form of taxation is the worst thing for you, this is what you should have done. We understand what you want to fund, but for you to fund it, this is an alternative method of funding. That's a rational debate.
Right. So hopefully we can solve this. They can solve it. There's still some more spending on the horizon. Just as you're raising taxes, the NHI is still on the horizon. The Minister of Health is going about setting up the board of the NHI. How is the country going to pay for an NHI?
I'm not sure if the Minister of Health himself has figured out.
Well, we do know there hasn't been a costing study by the Minister of Health.
What I do know, which we have requested, is for them to help us do one thing, develop a program for rolling out NHI, so that we can begin to interact with the numbers. At the moment, it's difficult to interact with the numbers. Even if we're to do what they say it should be done in terms of the NHI Act, we must do a number of taxes. But for you to do that, you need to know how is this thing going to unfold. What we have said is that isn't the time first we buy these things in chunks, upgrade all our facilities in such a manner that they can be, in according to their language, NHI compliant. If we're to focus on that, upgrade the facilities so that everybody can feel comfortable to go into a public facility. If we're to start just by doing that.
Right. It's become quite a political battle. And again, stemming from politics, really. Okay, the Minister has to leave very shortly. He's going to do battle in the caucus, and we wish him luck. Just one last question, I think, just for the economists and those people who are listening. You've stuck to this. You want to consolidate debt. That's one of the big goals of this budget. That means you want to stop debt from rising any further. The government, Treasury has set, I think, 13 times. I think we've had 13 targets since 2016 to consolidate debt, to reach the high point of debt. And yes, we're still going, and we're now on 75% of GDP. Are we going to slay this beast?
If you look at the fiscal framework we've tabled, is in line with our predictions that 25-26 will be the peak of the debt to GDP. Although we're picking up at a higher percentage than we have anticipated, after that, it declines substantially. In that sense, if you look at the fiscal metric, whether, again, in terms of the primary balance, we're fine. So that on that side of things, I think we're good. But the problem is the following, which is my point. The size of the debt is, in my view, not a determining factor. If the economy is growing, there's no problem. For instance, if you look at some of the developed economies, they've got more than 100% debt to GDP. Nobody worries, because the capacity of the economy to service that debt is there. Our problem is a growth problem. So that's why we're beginning to say, let's focus on that growth problem. Structural reforms is a key component of that. Infrastructure is a key component of that. If you look at the infrastructure as the economic development side of things, is one of the fastest growing items in the budget of table at 8.1%. So we've got to attend to the growth issue as well, not only to manage that.
Right. Well, Minister, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing so candidly your thoughts and the processes behind the budget. And everybody will be watching very closely, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to carry on. Don't. Thanks so much. Take care.
Who's going to
All the best. This way. Right. Could we have Gulam Balam, the Standard Bank Chief Economist, and Commissioner of SARS, Edward Kieswetter? Thanks very much. Yeah, just three. Okay. Welcome, Commissioner. I hope the Minister's mic has been switched off. Look, congratulations to you, Commissioner. You've just pulled off the most incredible feat. You got an extra 4 billion out of the budget from a hot mic issue. Well done.
Well, I don't think the 4 million was created by the hot mic. If it ever has the ability to create money, I want a hot mic too. The Minister said something which I'm completely aligned to. Come with a rational argument, not an emotional argument. and I will listen. Desmond Tutu, I think, was known to say, you know, if you don't get your point across, don't shout louder, improve your argument. And I think the minister has always accepted that SARS is underfunded, but has struggled with, as he said, having this spending problem in an economy that is not growing to find the resources, which has meant that we could not change our argument to suit the resources or the limitations that the minister has. We had to sustain our argument that SARS is underfunded. I don't want to go into the history of that. So about 18 months ago, we, coming from business, I am a strong believer in a business case. So we put together a business case that said to the minister, give us R1 billion and we'll ring fence that as a focused project to deal with our growing inventory. And inventory in our language refers to a stock of debt and a stock of outstanding returns which are due to the state, but we do not have the capacity to collect it. And we said to the minister, as you consider raising taxes, you have to balance that with your capacity to increase revenue. Perfectly rational argument. We can disagree on the numbers, but you can't dispute that the argument holds. And we then took the 1 billion, and we will report on that in 3 weeks' time. But when we do, you will certainly hear from us that it's been an extremely successful project. And so this year we said to the minister, the project is working, the business case prevails, double the money, and we'll double the output. I think to both people like Gulam and others, we tend to forget that the budget number that is announced, which South Africans, by the way, call a target, it's not a target, it's an estimate. And it's an estimate based on assumptions of variables in the economy. For example, the wage bill increase, the number of jobs the economy will create, in the case of fuel levy, the amount of fuel that will be consumed. And at the beginning of the year, February, a year ago, there's a view that comes from a consensus debate between Treasury, SARB, and SARS, and somehow you have to make a call. That call then goes into the models. That models produce a number. Like the minister, I don't live in models, I live in the real world. But you have to get a number, and that's how the number is defined. We don't generally go back. When the minister adjusts the number from 1863 to 1841, or as now is the case, 1846, we have to go back and do what we call backcasting. And say, now we don't have assumptions, we now have actuals. If we had to plug those actuals into the model and backcast it, what would we have estimated? And we'll find that our estimates would have been lower, because the wage bill didn't grow at 8.4, it grew at 4.6. The consumption of fuel did not grow as we predicted to produce 102 billion rand against the 92 in the prior year. Consumption actually contracted for various reasons by 6%, so we use less fuel and therefore fuel levy is down. Imports were projected to grow at 6% year on year. Now we know that imports is contracting at 1.3. And that has a... And if you add up all those billions, you have a hole. And what we are saying is it is by ring-fence projects and administrative efficiencies that you can begin to fill that hole. If the variables improved, You would not have a hole, and the number would be higher than the estimate. If the variable decreases, if those variables decrease, you have to find a way to fill the hole. And that was our argument, and we'll continue to make this argument because until you replace it, Gulam, with a smarter argument.
Right. Gulam, I really want to bring you into the conversation. I just want to ask the Commissioner. Okay, so in fact, what happened yesterday is that the Minister added another 7 billion to your budget for over the next 3 years. How are you going to use that money? You've spoken a bit about how these are recognized arrears. These are people who you have a lot of people who haven't actually paid up, who you think should be paying up. Should South African taxpayers be, or errant taxpayers be worried? How are you going to use that money to make those collections?
So let me just rectify that.
Okay.
The original budget 3 weeks ago had already penciled in 3.5 billion rand over the MTEF.
Right, yes.
500, 1.5 and 1.5. The 3 weeks certainly was useful for us because we went back and we argued our case. And the position as we stand now is that 3.5 billion remains in the base, and over the MTEF another 4 billion is added. So that's the 4 billion you spoke that we got more.
Yes.
And so 2 billion of that for this year we will use. So we have debt collection as part of our normal business. And by the way, maybe it's useful to clarify that when we talk about 800 billion that's unrecovered, we talk about 45% of that, 40 to 45% is stock, inventory, that has a contingent liability on our balance sheet, the state's balance sheet. You would call it non-performing loans or debt due to Standard Bank. In our case, it's outstanding returns to which there's a value, and secondly, outstanding debt that is not disputed, that is unrecovered, and debt that is disputed that has to be settled. So that is the basket of billions that we talk about that already belongs to the state. So what we'll do this year, we'll redouble our efforts to, in a very focused way, drive a debt recovery program and a recovery of outstanding returns. And we believe that whatever the economy may do, if we can recover that debt, it will add to the revenue, whatever the economy may do. And then 500 billion over the 3 years per year will be used to modernize our system to address the other 55%. The other 55% will refer to illicit financial flows, financial and tax crime, aggressive tax planning, and other forms of non-compliance that require SARS to step up and modernize its platform, improve our utilization of data science and artificial intelligence. We can't. We have 16 petabytes of data. Okay, for the geeks in the room, that's 15 times the Netflix library. That's how much data we sit on. And so we need to improve the technology and the capacity to deal with all that data and to collect additional data. Because when we have perfect data and a good enough capacity to work that data, we can predict, as we have, for example, identified 156,000 individuals who on our records are not required to file because at some point in time they were below the threshold. But over time, the economic activity suggests that they have an additional wealth that is not explained. And so now we can target the 156,000 and say, you should file. And then we have, also through predictive modeling, about another 30-odd thousand taxpayers that we checked the economic activity and see, well, they have economic activity, and we started with R1 million just to keep the numbers down, but we can lower that to include everything. Economic activity of over R1 million per year, but when we correlate that to our register, they're not registered. So now we have to go after them and register them and then start getting them to submit the returns. So those are the pieces of work that requires more intelligence, requires a better ability to collect and connect the dots, and then you need the human capacity, because these people don't say, oh, I'm so glad you found me. How much do you need? Let me write out the check. They say, are you mad? We don't owe you anything. You shouldn't be registered. And sometimes I feel, we send our auditors, our investigators to a gunfight and arm them with a nail clipper and expect results.
Nail clipper. Right. Gulam, what's your response to all of that? I mean, does this argument make sense to you? Is this the right? Is this where we should go? Is it surprising to you that there are this many people who are not paying their taxes?
It's unsurprising. I think two things. The budget seems to have the potential in the ensuing years of delivering some windfalls. The one windfall would be the investment in SARS that has the potential, and I say this jocularly, to deliver the highest multiplier than any other investment. We, as economists, tend to talk about every $1 that goes into infrastructure delivering between 2 and 3 times that return. Seemingly, what the Commissioner is saying is that there's a vast amount of untapped potential in terms of broadening the tax base. So there's a windfall that, dare I say, Mr. Kiswete is going to have to account to society over the ensuing years. Granted, your term may not be that extended, but there's a legacy in the making. The second observation is that there's the suggestion of expenditure forensic appraisal.
Right.
Now, we're a little concerned that after 200 pursuits in terms of understanding the expenditure profile over the last decade, which is what the Minister conceded to, that born out of that there has not been, seemingly out of its own volition, any real returns to enhancing efficiencies. And that's again perhaps because of this instinctive muscle memory assertiveness towards taxing rather than appraising the expenditure profile more assertively. So to the extent that if there's one win that I think the TA should find conciliation with, is that they've brought a more sophisticated and dual approach to appraising the budget. So in the ensuing years, we do see the expenditure side begins to deliver enhanced outcomes, and items that shouldn't be there are culled, or items that are there just get better yield, then maybe we're in for this unaccounted for thus far surprises. And I say that, if I may, just for two reasons. What troubles me about the budget, in just the recent years, we have had two windfalls also. The one was just in the aftermath of COVID. We had commodity prices soar, and mining firms delivered very substantial tax to the authorities. In fact, over 2 years at least, mining sector tax liabilities was about 3 times to 4 times what it would have been in the previous 5 years. We've also more recently had the contribution from what we call the GFACRA, the contingency reserve account, and that has amounted to about 150 billion rand. And what troubles me is that with this existential insertion of additional very sizable revenues, we still need to fiddle to find 60 billion rand, a 2 percentage point VAT increase, to balance. So this, combined with what you suggested, propensity to spend, with this inability to take these windfalls to materially correct and get, I say this respectfully, the addict away from the tax levers. Is this going to be that moment of evolution where after, as you've also suggested, a decade of promises with regard to curbing the indebtedness profile, we have yet to see evidence that it can be done, even though I'll quickly say the level of conviction that the Minister showed between, let's say, Budget 1.0, February Budget 2.09, March, it seems unassailable. So I'm comfortable with the will, the political will to do it, but we still bereft of evidence.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that what we didn't talk about when the Minister was here was the quality of spending. And I think that an assessment on the quality of spending is going to be a really important part of well, whether this budget works or whether it doesn't, and whether we get out of this fiscal hole. Gulam, what impact do you think? So now, what the Finance Minister has done, okay, we increase the VAT, and then 2 years in a row of no relief for fiscal drag. So people people paying a greater proportion of tax. What impact do you think this is going to have on the economy? How do you view these taxation increases in the context of the struggle for South Africa to grow?
I suspect bracket creep can be judged as a silent thief. And I would go even so far as to say that personal income tax, employees of firms, have for more than a decade been the soft underbelly to harness additional taxation. So the level of growth as a share in terms of personal income tax within the profile of value-added tax and corporate tax, which just those three items are sort of the big fill within the revenue stream. Personal income tax has left over the last decade from around 28% of that profile to near 40%, both in part of the increase in the marginal tax rate, obviously the growing economy and the swell of number of individuals liable for tax, as well as bracket creep. And I acknowledge, as the Minister has conceded, that that has been drained abundantly. And so the headroom for that now has reached its ceiling. But I suspect, as I'm trying to assert, that has been an easy reach, and this instinct to go for that which is easy and efficiency and works needs to be reframed. Consumption expenditure accounts for about 62% of our GDP. So when you're extracting these revenues, and let's say the multiplier of government spending, I'm just making a suggestion, is weaker than when the money is in the consumer's own hands to spend, then you're going to get a more diminished outcome. So the consumption body has got heft. It needs to be healthy to elevate the level of internal demand, which then triggers investment. I will conclude by just saying this. Over the last decade, survey data has consistently showed us that the two things that consumer sentiment is most bedeviled by is first the political climate, and that has been consistent and seemingly but improved over the last few years, and particularly with the government of national unity. So political climate has been the dominant hesitation in terms of more assertive spending and investment. The second has been aggregate demand. In other words, investors in South Africa, in the retail economy, in the real economy, just don't see that the consumer body as having verve. And with the VAT increase, that's certainly a headwind. And of course, in addition to consumption taxes, and as I said, the soft underbelly of personal income tax, that too has undermined that body of spending. And that therefore saps some of the undergird to our economy.
Can I just give a perspective? So you're quite right, Gulam, that the 18 billion that the Minister is able to save by holding back the inflation adjustment. So that's a short-term measure, right? You can't sustain that forever. Again, we would argue, put that into the context of a number the Minister mentioned this morning, that on our register, we have about 480,000 individuals who earn more than R1 million, right? That produces about 400 billion of the 800 billion of contribution. Just hold that number in your head for a moment, because I believe in evidence-based rationality. If we are saying to you therefore, that there are probably at least 100,000 individuals who in South Africa at the moment earn more than $1 million but are not on our register. Imagine if we could find them, right? Imagine if we could find them, you add another 100 billion rand onto your tax revenue. It more than adequately fund any tax rebate or any bracket creep adjustment that the minister could consider. But we need to think more systemically, more strategically, and more long-term about these things. And at the moment, because of the economic pressures, we often reduce our thinking to a short-term response to deal with the fiscal challenge for this year, knowing that we're buying ourselves time. And so our argument includes saying the 2 billion will address some of the cash flow challenges in the short term, but we need another allocation to go and find that 100,000, to go and deal with those who are hiding their money, masking their economic activities, using all kinds of structures to mask the true nature of their wealth. That is hard work. But if you don't start today, you're going to have the same problem next year, and the next, and the next. So we will continue to make that argument because we say that based on evidence, on clear rationality, and conviction.
Commissioner, if I may just say, in finding those individuals, if you look on the other side of the tablecloth, you may uncover some.
Also,
They're under, over, and behind the tablecloth.
On the other side of that mountain, I suspect.
that's right. Commissioner, you've embraced AI. You really are a fan of AI. Tell us about how, you said I think I've heard you say you use it every day. What are you using it for, and how is it how is it being used in SARS?
So I think what taxpayers, they look so afraid. Only the guilty are afraid. And I really say this with utmost sincerity. Our first deployment of AI is not to catch you out. It is to provide a better service to you. Let me demonstrate how we do that. Our ambition is to make the fulfillment of your tax obligation a non-event. We don't want to see you. We don't want to hear from you. We don't want you to call us, email us, tweet about us. If we never see you, we would be happy. We only want to hear ka-ching. That's all. Now, is that possible, you may ask? Well, this year, 5 million people of the 8 million people who had a filing obligation didn't have to do anything. What did we do? We sourced the data from various third parties, from employers, from retirement funds, from medical aids, from overseas bank accounts, and other data sources in the economy. We take that data and we run it first through the tax calculation to produce an outcome. Then we take the outcome and pass it through a risk engine that has certain rules and certain AI, and it alerts us to any high-risk outcome where something isn't right. So for 5 million people, our data set is sufficiently complete to say to taxpayers, you don't have to submit a return. We already know everything we need to know, and you'll get an SMS from us, as 5 million people did in this year, and you can go onto your phone, log on. If you're happy with the answer, you can put your phone down, and under 72 hours, your refund will be in the bank. 5 million people had that experience this year. That's the deployment of AI. At the same time, we allow taxpayers to submit any outstanding information if they want to edit their return. By the way, 98% acceptance rate by improving. When we started this, we had a 3% with a low acceptance rate. Today, having refined our algorithms, we now have a 98% acceptance rate. Then, if you do decide to edit your return and submit it to us, you will have your assessment in under 5 seconds. That's world class. In addition, we've now deployed, and at the back end of that, our fraud risk detection AI have been able to provide that level of service without compromising the fiscus. Because in VAT and PIT last year, we were able, and debt equalization, those three factors, we were able to add over 90 billion rand to the fiscus. That would not have been there did we not use the AI. We've now deployed biometric recognition system. We have customs predictive modeling. We have our next phase is when we alert you for a further verification, we still have 600 of our staff who must do that manually. Our next phase is to do the verification, disintermediate the people who do that, and do all of that just with algorithms.
There you go. It's not worth trying to cheat the AI, guys. Thank you, everyone. I'm sure you're getting hungry by now, and I think breakfast will be served. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I think it's been a really interesting budget and a very interesting conversation. Thank you, Commissioner. Keep up the good work. I'm sure all of us are employees, so we just pay and pay. We're the soft underbelly. And thanks very much to Gulam and to Standard Bank for sponsoring the event. Thanks so much.
Commissioner, lovely to see you.